Assalamualaikum and welcome to our presentation. So my name is ZAHIRAH and I am the representative of the group 5. I'll be the opening. Our topic will be types of assessment and evaluations in school. So let's begin. Before I begin, I would like to introduce my group members. We have 3 gentlemen and 2 flowers. Okay, so for gentlemen, the first gentleman we have Muhammad ZHARIF. The second gentleman we have MUIZ. The third gentleman we have Muhammad Ashraf. And next, for the flowers, we have NORAIN and me, ZAHIRAH. Okay, so let's begin. So what is basically assessment? So the word assess, it comes from the Latin verb assidere. The meaning of assidere is to sit with. So in assessment, according to Green 1999, in assessment, one is supposed to sit with the learner. So this implies it is something we do with and for students and not to students. Okay. So moving on. So for the definition of assessment, assessment is the process of documenting, usually in measurable terms, which are knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs. Okay, so assessment in education is the process of gathering, interpreting, recording, and using information about people's responses to an educational task. Next, assessment should have 3 things. Assessment should relate to regular performance of a student, and also assessment should gather from interdisciplinary sources, and assessment should consider all aspects of the student's life. Okay, next. So the purposes of assessment. First, assessment gathers information to assist the students in decision making. Next, assessment is a universal approach to screening and assessing a student, and it also monitors students' progress, and it also assigns grades or ranks of students, and assessment also determine one's own instructional effectiveness and also clarifying teachers' instructional intentions. Okay. So there are 2 types of assessments. The first one is formative. So for formative assessment, the goal is to monitor student learning to provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. And also it helps students to identify their strengths and weaknesses and target areas that need work. And last, it helps faculty to recognize which part the students are struggling with and address problem immediately. So for the next type of assessment, we have summative. Okay, so for summative, the goal is to evaluate students' comprehension at the end of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standard of benchmark. So the examples of summative assessment, the first one is we have midterm exam, final project, a paper, and a senior recital. Okay, so for evaluation has important role in judging student progress to know up to what extent students have achieved the desired set goal. And also evaluation implies a systematic, continuous process based on certain criteria process and emphasizes the broader personality change. Okay, so there are a few scopes of evaluation. The first one is value judgment. The second one is effectiveness of appraisal. The third one is provide baseline of guidance and counseling. Next, the placement and promotions in job. And also development of self-attitude, interest, and capability. And the last one is the development of skills and techniques of a student. Okay, so for the purpose of evaluation, to make it short, there are 5. The first one is to judge effectiveness of a learning process. The second one is to facilitate learning. And the third one is to diagnose problems and to make decisions and also to improve products. Okay, so for administrative, the evaluation, it helps to grade students' performance in class, and also it select and recruit select and recruit, and also it helps to promotional of personnel. And for education, the feedback evaluation for education. Evaluation is a feedback to educational program, and also it improves the instruction, measurement, and measuring device, and also it can be used as curriculum revision. Okay. And for monitoring and motivational, it monitor and motivate students' progress, and also it bring out the inherent capability of students. And evaluation continues and regular watch on pupil development. So the last one is diagnosis and guidance. Evaluation is a hard spot of gap of learning, and also it is a healthy competitive spirit. It helps to create a healthy competitive spirit among the students, and also it helps to identify the weakness of students in the learning process. Okay, so these are two types of evaluation. The first one is based on time. For example, summative and formative assessment, and the second one is based on manner and that interprets the result of the learner performances. Okay, so that's all from me. Next, I will pass the floor to my friend NORAIN. Thank you.
Okay, next I'll cover on the characteristic, assessment options, and non-test of classroom assessment. Okay, for characteristic of classroom assessment, the first one is learner-centered. The primary attention of teachers is focused on observing and improving learning. Next is teacher-directed. The individual teacher decides what to assess and how to respond to the information gained through the assessment. The third one is mutually beneficial, where students reinforce course content and strengthen their self-assessment skills. Followed by formative. To improve the quality of student learning, it improves information on what, how much, and how well students are learning. Next is context-specific. The assessment technique is chosen to fit the subject matter and the needs of the particular class. And the last one is ongoing, the creation and maintenance of a classroom feedback loop. Next is assessment options. The first one is selected response assessment. This category includes all of the objectively scored paper and pencil test formats. The second one is essay assessment. In this case, the respondent is provided with an exercise that calls for the preparation of an extended written answer. The third one is performance assessment, where the respondent carries out a specified activity under the watchful eye of the evaluator, who observes performance and makes judgment as to the quality of achievement demonstrated. The last one is personal communication assessment. One of the most common ways teachers gather information about day-to-day student achievement in the classroom is to talk to them. Next is non-test. There are 19 of them, where the first one is oral written reports. Second one is teacher observation. Third, journal. Fourth, portfolio of students' work. Fifth, slates or hand signals. 6 is games. 7, projects. 8, debates, followed by checklists, cartooning, models, notes, daily assessment, daily assignment, panel, learning centers, demonstration, problem solving, discussion, and the last one is organized note sheets and study guides. Okay, so for the first one is oral and written reports, where students research a topic and then present either orally or in written form. The next one is teacher observation, where teacher observes students while they work to make certain the student understand the assignment or on task. The third one is journal, where students write daily on assigned and personal topic, followed by portfolio of students' work, where teacher collects samples of students' work and saved for determined amount of time. Next is slates or hand signals, where they use this as signaling answers to the student. Next is games, where teacher utilize fun activities to have student practices and review concepts. Next, projects, the student research a topic and present it in a creative way. Followed by debates, the students make opposing position on a topic and defend their position. Next is checklist, the teacher will make a list of objectives that student needs to master and then check off the skill as student masters it. Next is cartooning, where students will use drawings to depict situation and ideas. Followed by models, the student produce a miniature replica of a given topic. Followed by notes, the student write a summary of a lesson. Daily assignment, where a student completes work assigned on a daily basis, whether at school or at home. Panel is a group of students verbally present information. For learning centers, students use teacher-provided activities for hands-on learning. Demonstration, where students present a visual enactment of a particular skill or activity. Followed by problem solving, where students follow a step-by-step solution of a problem. Next is discussion, where students in a group verbally interact on a given topic. And the last one is organized note sheets and study guides.
Let's move on to the next topic, traditional assessment versus authentic assessment. What is traditional assessment? Traditional assessment are the conventional method of testing which usually produce a written document such as quiz, exam, or paper. Standardized tests, most state achievement tests, and high school graduation examination are also examples of traditional assessment. What is authentic assessment? Authentic assessment is an assessment that is performance-oriented. The thinking goes with the assessment that aims to measure not only the correctness of the response, but also the thought process involved in arriving at the response, and that encourages students to reflect their own learning in both depth and breadth. The belief is that instruction will be pushed into a more thoughtful, more reflexive, richer mood as well. Purpose of traditional and authentic assessment. The purpose of traditional assessment is to evaluate if the students have learned the content, or to determine whether or not the students are successful in acquiring knowledge, or to rank and compare them against standards or other learners. Meanwhile, the purpose of authentic assessment is to measure students' proficiency by asking them to perform real-life tasks, and to provide feedback and help students manage their own learning, and to also evaluate students' competency. Comparison between traditional and authentic assessment. Traditional assessment provides teacher a snapshot of what the students know. Meanwhile, in authentic assessment provides teacher a more complete picture of what the students know and what they can do with what they know. Next, traditional assessment measures students' knowledge of the content, while in authentic assessment measures students' ability to apply knowledge of the content in real-life situation, or ability to use or apply what they have learned in meaningful ways. Next, traditional assessment requires students to demonstrate knowledge by selecting a response or giving correct answer, usually test students' proficiency through paper and pencil tests. In authentic assessment requires students to demonstrate proficiency by performing relevant tasks, showing application or what has been learned. In traditional assessment, assessment is separated from teaching and learning. Test usually comes after instruction to evaluate if the students have successfully learned the content. In authentic assessment, assessment is integrated with instruction. Assessment activities happen all throughout instruction to help students improve their learning and help teachers improve their teaching. In traditional assessment requires students to practice cognitive ability to recall, recognize, reconstruct body of knowledge that has been taught. Meanwhile, in authentic assessment, provide opportunities for students to construct meaning or new knowledge out of what has been taught. In traditional assessment, curriculum drives assessment. Meanwhile, in authentic assessment, assessment drives curriculum and instruction. Traditional assessment was standardized, valid, and reliable. In authentic assessment needs well-defined criteria or rubrics and standards to achieve reliability and validity. These are the examples of traditional and authentic assessment. There are 4 steps on how to create authentic assessments. The first step is identify the standards. Second step is select an authentic task. Step 3, identify the criteria for the task. And the last step is create the rubric. The first step is identify the standards. Standards like goals are statements of what students should know and be able to do. However, standards are typically more narrow in scope and more amenable to assessment than goals. For example, students will be able to add 2-digit numbers correctly. Step 2. Select an authentic task. Find a way students can demonstrate that they are fully capable of meeting the standards. The language of a well-written standard can spell out what a task should ask students to do to demonstrate their mastery of it. Step 3. Identify the criteria for the task. Ask, what does good performance on this task look like? Or, how will I know they have done a good job on this task? Criteria, indicators of good performance on a task. Characteristic of a good criterion. First, clearly stated, brief, observable, statement of behavior, and the last one is written in a language students understand. Identify the criteria for the task. Example for the standards. The student will be able to divide 2-digit numbers correctly. For the task, calculate the given math problem without using the calculator and answer it in the board. Explain their answers. For the criteria, the proper use of the step-by-step process in solving the problem. Correctness of the final answer, the way they explain and deliver the reason of how they arrive with the final answer. Step 4. Create the rubric. Once you have identified the criteria you want to look for as indicators of good performance, you need to decide whether to consider the criteria analytically or holistically. There are 2 types of rubrics. The first one is holistic rubric and the second one is analytic rubric. These are the example of holistic rubric. A holistic rubric consists of a single scale with all criteria to be included in the evaluation. With a holistic rubric, the rater assigns a single score based on an overall judgment of the student work. The rater matches an entire piece of student work to a single description on the scale. These are the example of analytic rubric for composition writing. Analytic rubric is 2-dimensional rubrics with the level of achievement as columns and assessment criteria as rows. It allows you to assess participant achievements based on multiple criteria using a single rubric. You can assign different weights or value to different criteria and include an overall achievement by totaling the criteria, and it was written in a table form.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. With me MUIZ, and I will continue to the next topic, which is traditional and modern method of teaching and learning. Traditional teaching methods. We will explore what it is about as well as its benefits and its drawbacks. The meaning of the traditional teaching is the most significant and successful teaching instrument is lecturing, which is the most conventional. Number 2, many students believe that lectures are the most effective teaching and learning technique. Number 3, the professor condenses a large amount of study information and presents it to the students in an organized manner, considerably reducing the students' workload. Last one, even while lectures are great teaching and learning tools, they have their own set of advantages and disadvantages. Okay, let's look the advantages and disadvantages in traditional learning and teaching method. Okay, the advantages: lectures can be used to meet the specific needs of the audience. Lectures can be used to condense a huge amount of information and can be presented to a larger audience. And the last one, lectures can be appealed to the students who learn best by listening. Before the disadvantages, lectures will only be appropriate for effective communicators. In a lecture, reading the material on the slide is ineffective. In lectures, students are made passive and unable to provide feedback to the teacher. One teacher assumes that all students learn at the same rate and have the same understanding level. However, this is not happening. They move to the next modern teaching method. We will look at what it's all about, one method and their benefits and cons. In the meaning by the modern teaching method, in basic terms, it is a teaching method that focuses more on teaching students improve their cognitive behavior by using numerous new and inventive ideas rather than making them recite the syllabus and pass the exam in the same old style. Instead, they pass the examination in a modern and advanced style. There is some of the most significant modern teaching methods. One, problem-based learning, team-based learning, small group discussion, and flipped classroom project. As well as the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages is these teaching methods are considered very effective learning tool as active student participation is a must. These methods lead to long-term knowledge retention. These methods are very effective for students who do not excel working solo. The last one, these methods develop teamwork and interpersonal communication skills. Before the disadvantages, student unpreparedness is the biggest hindrance to learning in this method. Students who are academically strong may provide more input to have better participation than the other students. Hence, it may create a learning imbalance among the students. It is also not effective for a large group of students. For the last one, we look about the comparison between traditional learning and problem-solved learning. Before the traditional learning, the method, teacher told what we need to know and we memorize it. So the problem assigned to illustrate how to use it. For the problem-solved learning, problem assigned, we identify what we need to know, we learn and apply to solve the problem. I think that's all from me. Okay, let's move to the next presenter.
Let's follow an interview session on current issues of assessment in our country with Sikdu ZARANE, a senior teacher, Guru Kanan, of Technical and Vocational, TVET, at SMK Keladi. Disclaimer. Interview was conducted in Malay but will be accompanied by verbatim in English.
Reaksi bila diumumkan pemansuhan UPSR ni, rata-rata guru, kalau kat sekolah menengah yang tempat saya mengajar tu, rata-ratanya kurang bersetujulah. Sebab bagi kami para guru, peperiksaan atau pentaksiran ni dianggap sebagai satu benda yang penting. Nak uji sejauh mana murid-murid dapat apa yang kami telah sampaikan sepanjang beberapa tahun murid-murid berada di sekolah. Jadi bila tak ada pentaksiran atau peperiksaan ni, dia seolah macam tak ada satu alat yang boleh jadi kayu ukur nak uji sejauh mana murid terima apa yang telah kami sampaikan dan apa yang murid dah fahami dan dah dapat sepanjang mereka berada di sekolah. Awal tahun tu juga kita belajar secara PDPR kan, belajar secara online, dan kita memang tak kenal pun budak-budak yang baru masuk tu, murid-murid yang baru masuk tu kita tak kenal, kita tak tahu kemampuan dia, dan dia orang bila respon melalui dalam kelas online ni, kita tak boleh kenal pasti sama ada dia ni seorang budak yang boleh membaca, menulis, mengira ataupun tidak, sebab respon tu dia macam macam mana nak abang, kita tak boleh ukur pula kemampuan dia. Okey, jadi bila sekolah bersemuka start pada Februari, dah masuk kelas bersemuka, dah jalan seminggu 2 minggu, barulah kita kenal pasti dalam kelas tu. Contohnya kelas saya mengajar sendiri, ada 3 kelompok murid, yang cemerlang, yang sederhana dan yang lemah. Okey, kalau ikut dalam kaedah pengajaran, dia ada satu kaedah yang dipanggil, kalau tak silap, kaedah pembelajaran terbeza. Okey, kaedah pembelajaran terbeza ni kalau ikut ada pendapat kata kita tak boleh agihkan budak ikut pencapaian, kita kena letak sekali je dalam kelas ni. Kemudian kita ajak ikut kaedah pembelajaran terbeza ni lah. Okey, kaedah pembelajaran terbeza ni kita kena entertain budak ni ikut kemampuan belajar dia. Atas kertas, kalau secara teori bolehlah cikgu ni nak sediakan yang pembelajaran terbeza ni, dia sediakan bahan, kalau bahan edaran tu kena sediakan 3 bahan edaran berbeza. Kemudian masa mengajar tu dia kena guna pendekatan berbeza, dia nak entertain 3 kelompok yang berbeza ni kan. Dia teori memang macam boleh buat, tapi bila kita duduk dalam kelas yang sebenar, contohnya dalam masa 40 minit tu, kita nak gunakan 3 kaedah yang berbeza ni, jadi macam tak cukup masa. Jadi dia macam mau tak mau kita nak kena letak budak ni, tempatkan budak dalam kelas ni kena ikut kemampuan belajar mereka, barulah kita senang nak ajak. Kalau dalam kelas tu ada 3 kumpulan belajar yang berbeza, memang susah kita nak entertain mereka sebab kesuntukan masa. Dan akhirnya sekolah terpaksa buat keputusan untuk adakan ujian diagnostik untuk tengok kemampuan murid ni. Kita buat satu ujian bagi yang dipanggil ujian diagnostik, bagi kat budak-budak tingkatan 1 ni jawab. Kemudian berlakulah perubahan-perubahan, tukar-tukar kelas daripada kelas hujung ke kelas depan, daripada kelas nombor 2 ke kelas nombor 3, macam itulah. Ini supaya memudahkan guru untuk mengajar. Dia bukan setakat tukar nama, tapi dia ada berlaku perubahan di mana pada awal PMR diubah kepada putih 3 tu, putih 3 ni dia bukan setakat ukur peperiksaan di hujung tahun, tapi dia ada juga pentaksiran berasaskan sekolah PBS yang diukur sepanjang tahun, daripada awal murid berada dalam kelas sampai ke hujung tahun. Murid diberi band. Setiap kali dia habis satu topik ataupun satu topik, cikgu akan beri band kepada murid tu. Yang pentaksiran last tu, pentaksiran daripada pusat tu di hujung tahun, tapi cikgu-cikgu kena rekodkan dia punya pentaksiran yang berlaku dalam kelas. Dan sekarang ni pentaksiran dalam kelas tu dipanggil pentaksiran bilik darjah, PBD. Sewaktu berlaku PDP tu dalam kelas tu, cikgu dah buat penilaian ataupun pentaksiran terhadap murid tu, sama ada dari segi pemerhatian ataupun bila dia berinteraksi dengan murid tu secara lisan ataupun secara bertulis. Dia akan nilai lah murid tu dari masa ke masa sepanjang proses PDP tu. Dia tak tunggu ujian bertulis di tengah tahun ataupun hujung tahun. Jadi yang ni dia macam beri lebih peluang kepada murid. Setengah murid tu sewaktu dalam kelas ada yang dia cemerlang. Sewaktu dalam kelas dia boleh buat apa saja yang cikgu ajar apa, cikgu tanya dia boleh jawab balik. Kalau buat amali pun dia boleh buat dengan baik. Tapi dan waktu tu cikgu akan beri tahap penguasaan yang baiklah pada murid tu. Tapi bila waktu peperiksaan, bila menjawab secara bertulis ni, mungkin dia kurang sikit kemampuan nak jawab, nak ingat balik topik-topik yang lepas. Jadi masa tu kalau secara bertulisnya mungkin jawapannya kurang baik, tapi kita dah ada rekod dah sebelum tu. Sewaktu dalam kelas murid ni dapat perform dengan baik dan kita dah beri tahap penguasaan yang baik kepada murid tu. Jadi dia macam ada perbezaan, memang ada perbezaan lah PMR dengan PT3.
Now let's look at the results of the survey on the issue of abolition of UPSR filled out by 188 respondents.
All respondents came from people aged 13 to 41 years and above. If you look at the age group pie chart, the majority of respondents come from the age group of 41 years and above, which is 63.3%. Then if you look at the pie chart of types of job or student, the majority of respondents come from those who work in relation to the education sector, meaning most of respondents are from senior teachers. A total of 69.1% of respondents disagreed with the abolition of the UPSR, and most of those who disagreed consisted of respondents who are teachers or those related to the education sector. Among the reasons given is the UPSR as a medium to measure students' mastery of related subjects. The same goes with the PT3 abolition pie chart, which consists of 75.5% of respondents who disagreed with it, and most of them gave the same reason. And it should be noted here that those who do not support the abolition of UPSR and PT3 are not simply disagreeing, but they suggest that there are still more room for improvement and refinement on UPSR without having to abolish it, and so that the assessment is more accurate and holistic. Furthermore, among the country's academic figures, there are also different views on this issue. Lecturer at the Center for Education and Community Welfare Studies, Faculty of Education, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, Dr. Anwar Ahmad, on the other hand, described the abolition of the UPSR as a great victory for the struggle to change the country's education. According to him, it is not appropriate to categorize students' abilities at too early stage, as it causes them to build weak self-esteem, distrust their abilities, and consider them as unsuccessful human beings if they fail in the UPSR. However, he believes the abolition of UPSR should be filled with two other things. The quality of classroom assessment consistency, PBD, must be improved, especially related to the level of reliability of classroom assessment by teachers and the validity of constructs or dimensions that need to be assessed by teachers in the classroom. However, the education figure, Professor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Ishaq Harun, did not agree with the abolition of UPSR because it risks weakening the teaching and learning process, PDP, and can lower the level of educational achievement of students in schools. He opined that the Minister of Education should have retained the examination but changed its format and content from a non-reference test to a standards-based examination. According to him, if the UPSR is abolished, we will not be able to assess the standard level of student competence in these important subjects, thus risking weakening the PDP process because we cannot improve the weaknesses of pedagogy and student learning. According to him, through the standard-based format and content, UPSR can be used to determine the standard level of student mastery in a subject, thus enabling intervention measures to be done earlier through PDP methods and appropriate training. In conclusion, although there are many different opinions among academics and teachers about the abolition of UPSR and PT3, they all have similar goals and proposed solutions, that is, by strengthening holistic assessment in the classroom to enable schools to return to the goal of producing balanced students in terms of physical, spiritual, emotional, and intellectual, thus no longer just an ace in the subject.